It's Talk Funny, a podcast by Mark Bailey and other comics from all over. We came to Japan because oh here she comes. From Hong Kong she eats weird things. Oh here she comes. She's a bad eater. The Talk Funny podcast from NagoyaRadio.com and Nagoya Comedy. Here's Mark Bailey.
Mark Bailey, Mike Miller, and Talk Funny. We're going to get to the good old days in a second, or the bad old days, birth of Nagoya Comedy. But first, earlier I was talking on another podcast episode about Nate Bergatze. I never got to the end of what I was talking about. Of course, he had a Netflix special, and I really love his writing. I really like comics that have good writing because I'm jaded, and when you're pulling a flim-flam, if you surprise me, I am really impressed because I can see these coming.
Or if you have a joke inside a joke, like a Matryoshka doll.
Unlike Chris Rock, remind me to get back to Nate Bergatze. Chris Rock, and I even did this in the set, Chris Rock repeats the premise three times.
Repeats the premise 3 times?
I'm telling you, Mike, he repeats the premise 3 times.
Are you saying he repeats the premise 3 times?
What I'm saying is, Chris Rock repeats the premise 3 times or more.
Oh, 3 times or more, okay.
He repeats the premise. What did I just say?
Are you trying to say something to me, Mark? I didn't quite get that.
What did I say? I talked to you before, right? What did I tell you? What did I tell you from Goodfellas? What did I tell you? I told you not to buy anything, right? The FBI's out here. They're going to get on their
helicopters. Look for the helicopters.
Cut to Layla with all the dead people in the cars that they bought. And I told you not to buy anything. Anyway, we have ADD.
Yeah, that's a good scene.
So Chris
you're
Rock,
from New York. If you're from New York, you pretty much have to bring up Goodfellas every other conversation.
It took over the cowboy movies. In the 60s, it was
That's
cowboy
true.
movies,
Cowboys,
right?
And then it went to... Then Godfather was like a real innovation. A lot of people don't realize, before The Godfather, that wasn't really a genre. Like this idea of American Italian mafia was not a genre in Hollywood. There were gangster films in the 30s, but it was like shoot 'em up with the FBI and stuff like that. But there was not... I think that was the real... That was a cultural moment, really. And the book, too. The book was a real cultural moment. And I remember reading the book, and I was like, wow, interesting. Because when I was growing up, mafia movies were like already a cliche. And it was just, another mob movie. There's so many of them made. But Goodfellas is a good movie. I mean, and The Godfather, of course. And if I were to say otherwise, I'd probably not get out of this room alive. But I do agree, it's a good movie. Mark has a new computer that's already failing. We'll do it live!
We'll do it live! I was just going to do that. Damn thing sucks! Do it live!
Bill O'Reilly.
Bill O'Reilly.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, so
no, he is alive.
You were talking about the mob movies. There's a documentary on YouTube I highly recommend. The Italian community was not.
Oh, they hated it.
I remember.
They didn't like it.
I was 6 when this was filmed. They were 5 or 6. They were not happy. If you remember some of the characters, Tessio is one of the characters. He's the guy played by Abe Vigoda, which, by the way, I'm related to, apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
He's a Russian Jew.
Oh.
But he's got that...
Very dry kind of humor.
But that face is impending, like a villain face.
Yeah, right? He's got that dark kind of look.
He's got we were talking about Greg Giraldo. Greg Giraldo, one of our favorite late great comics.
He was awesome.
God, I'm all over the place on this podcast, but remind me to get back...
Godfather.
Mm-hmm. Greg Giraldo, one time, they were doing a roast...
Or is it another one? Oh, it was Larry the Cable Guy you were talking about.
That's a different story.
Okay.
Where he said, Larry the Cable Guy, I must be doing something wrong. He's a billionaire, and I got holes in my shoes. That's one of Greg Giraldo.
Kind of like our story.
Yeah. I literally have holes in my shoes. There was one of these...
Thank you, Patreon.
There was one of these roasts. Oh, as Jeff Ross got up, and he said... This is such a great moment. I wish Abe Vigoda was with us.
Yes.
And then they cut to Abe Vigoda.
He's
He's
sitting
there.
at the table. He's on the dais.
He's got those dark rings.
It is looking like...
You got the dead expression. Okay, so I brought up Abe Vigoda because he played a character called Tessio in Godfather. Yeah, it was the original one. And they were trying to find out who... We really have ADD. It's a long story. Godfather...
Too little sleep.
Marlon Brando told, as he's raising Al Pacino up to take over the family, he tells Al Pacino, you're going to be betrayed. And the way you're going to be betrayed is a friend of the family is going to set up a sit-down, which is it's a meeting between 2 rivals. That person is the traitor. You will never leave that room. If you go to that sit-down, you're going to get whacked. So watch out if anybody, a friend of the family. And he said, well, who is it? Who is it? He said, you'll find out. They'll ask you. And so after his father dies, Abe Vigoda's character, whose name is Tessio, I've got to point to this, comes up. He meets with a great actor that's not Italian, who's the consigliere. Robert Duvall is the consigliere. He's the advisor. And they figured out, because Abe Vigoda's character said, I want to have a sit down with you, and we're just going to take care of this once and for all.
Yeah, once and for all, for sure.
Friend, yeah, and I'm a friend of the family, so you can trust me. And then Al Pacino's character is like, sounds familiar. Yeah, I remember what I was told. So he said, okay. So Al Pacino's character, Michael Corleone.
Was that the restaurant scene, the famous restaurant scene?
No. This is the limousines. Michael's family gets the limousines ready, and then Tessio, Abe Vigoda, shows up, and he goes, I thought we were taking my car. You know, he's going to whack Michael. Michael said, no, I'm going in a separate car. We're both going in different cars. And then Robert Duvall comes up and says, we know what you did, and you're going in a different car. And he said, well, that's going to mess up all my plans. And he goes, well, yeah, it will. Yeah, it will. That's going to be a day record for you.
It's going to make things more complicated.
And that's one of the famous lines in Godfather, is where Abe Vigoda's last time you see him, because he gets whacked, but they don't show that. And he says, tell Michael I always liked him. It was nothing personal. It was just business, right? I bring that up. We were talking about
He's had 2 hours of sleep, folks. He's had 2 hours of sleep. Cut him some slack.
We're talking about Alzheimer's. Tessio. That's not an Italian name. It's not a real name.
Oh.
And I'm coming from what we're talking about. The Italians in New York were not happy. It was filmed in New York, and they're using Italian names. So they told Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola, Corleone is actually a name of a place. It's not really used for names. So Michael Corleone is the Godfather. Well, you can't use the name of a real Godfather. You can't use Colombo.
You would get in trouble with the real mob then, right?
You can't use Genovese. You can't use Colombo.
Yeah.
And then you've got, Valley's, not Frankie Valli, but you've got Valley, Valli, Valley's Barbershop. You can't have a guy named Valley in there. People aren't going to go to that barbershop anymore with the barbershop scene. So it's like if we were making a movie about how comedians suck, we couldn't use like Mike or Mark or Steve or Tim. We couldn't use those names.
Yeah.
We'd have to use Tom and
That's true. We need some aliases here.
So that was my whole point.
To protect the innocent.
That was my whole point. So Nate Bergatze.
Here we go.
He did Saturday Night Live. I've got a little beef with the way they do that. You had something about Saturday Night Live with the writers.
I find that the writers, it's often a lot better when there's a guest comedian, because you can tell that comedian has been working with the writers to make some funny skits. Because sometimes when it's just actors, oh my lord, the writers, they get caught in these ruts. It's like they have a premise, and then they have a joke, and it's like one joke for the entire skit, and they just keep hammering it and hammering it and hammering it and hammering it to the point where you're like, I get it, and it's just annoying.
Back when Seth Meyers was the head writer, I think you might be able to find it on YouTube, and they did a behind the scenes of how a joke makes it on to Saturday Night Live.
I didn't see that.
Because they're changing last minute.
All I heard from people who left there is they all said that the writers' room at Saturday Night Live is like a viper's nest, and all the writers are trying to get their sketch on the show, and they're all fighting each other, and there's all this backstabbing and stuff going on. I mean, that's not a good way to come up with creative sketch ideas, like it should. Like, we're not like that here in Nagoya, which is why we're so successful, obviously.
Yeah, I don't tell you guys don't tell that joke or anything in it. And
we actually give each other jokes.
Yeah, but that's my favorite Larry David story. It's remember when he, there's a real guy named Kramer, real guy, which is his neighbor, and Larry David, he said he just got tired of going to the writers' room, and they never used his sketch ever, and he was there for like a year or 2 years, and they never used it. And Lorne Michaels, who runs it, would always say, yeah, it's not quite ready for
prime time.
It's not ready for prime time. Yeah. But thanks for the idea. But so Larry David has another idea. And he goes, this sucks, man. They never use my ideas. He was getting paid even though they didn't use his ideas.
What's the problem?
Yeah, so he goes, I'm going to quit. So he quit. And he said, as I'm walking down the streets of New York and I realized how much money I cost myself, I realized I didn't want to quit. So I asked Kramer, and Kramer said, just show up tomorrow. But then it never happened.
Yeah.
And he did.
That's hilarious.
And he walked in. And Lorne Michaels like, I thought you quit. He goes, I'm kidding. I was kidding. He said when he
comedian's
quit,
license.
When he quit, he said, screw you people. I hate you, Lorne. You could all go to hell. I hate this place. This place sucks.
That was actually a bit.
Yeah.
I was doing a bit.
Yeah. And they're like, I thought you quit. No, I didn't. No, I didn't quit.
That's like taking gaslighting to the next level.
They used that in Seinfeld, I think.
Yes, I think George quit, and yes, he did that. There's
Larry
an episode
David
like
is
that.
actually George.
I remember that. Yeah,
you knew that, right? The George character is always Larry David.
Oh, okay.
Always Larry David. The Jerry character is Jerry Seinfeld.
What?
Did you know that?
No, I never got
What
that.
is gambling in
I never
Las
got
Vegas?
that.
He hides it well.
I mean, he's like a whole other person in that role. I was like, is that
he's
Jerry
not
Seinfeld?
typecast at all.
Is that Jerry Seinfeld in that role? What?
Wow, he plays a plumber, right? He plays a comic. A comic.
Oh, comic. That's a stretch.
A stand-up
That's a
comic.
stretch. I mean, how did they ever consider him for that role?
Every George story, Larry David said he actually did all of those.
Wow.
Larry David would just talk about it as if it's as you do.
Yeah.
I went back, Mike, and I pretended that I didn't quit.
Yeah.
And then Jerry was like, "That's funny." I go, "What's funny about that? What's funny about it?"
It's insane. That's what's funny.
And he's like, "We should use that." He goes, "Nobody would like that. That's not
Nobody
funny
would
to
believe it."
anybody.
Yeah.
It's just what I did." And all the crap that George does, right?
Yeah.
Like his parents, Seinfeld's parents, steal batteries.
Oh, yeah.
Stole batteries.
Something like that, yeah.
Well, Larry David's family stole batteries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Jerry Seinfeld said, "That's funny." And he goes, "Well, everybody does that.
Everybody do that?
What? Everybody steals batteries. Who are these people stealing batteries?"
I want to shout out to Larry David because he's made a lot of money in the comedy business and he's still funny. And he's still putting it out there and he's still original. And he's coming out with a new season of Curb, I think.
can't wait.
The last season. He's like, what, 70 now? I mean, the he's getting up there.
People think that he's playing himself, and I thought that for a long time, but I've asked a lot of people. Julie Louise Dreyfus has made some cameos on there, and I know someone who knows her. She has listened to the show before, and I heard from someone she knows that said, Larry David wants you to think that that's the way he actually is, but he's actually very nice, bleeding heart liberal.
Of course. That's what I love about
he's a
him.
sweetheart.
And that's what I love about his comic persona is that he's always the butt of the joke. It's always he's the idiot or he's the selfish guy or it's always him being the bad guy.
Yeah.
And that's why people love it because he doesn't have his ego invested in the character. Like it's like, I'm just going to make fun of myself, Too many comics get such big egos.
Time for a Yiddish lesson. So what he does in Yiddish, we've done flim flam and some other Yiddish terms. What he does is called, I think I mentioned it to you before, there's the shmo and there's the shlemiel.
Shmo and shmiel.
Shmo is
shlemiel.
the klutz. Shmo is a klutz. He spills the coffee. The shlemiel is the loser that the coffee gets spilled on.
Right.
It always gets spilled on. And he's the shlemiel.
Yeah.
And he never backs down. And he's always wrong.
Yeah.
And everybody hates him.
Yeah.
But he's not, in real life, Larry David is not like that. He did a lot of work for, charity work for PETA. Greenpeace.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like Gilbert Gottfried as well was kind of like that. He was a real sweetheart and very humble guy and completely different from his stage persona.
So I was telling Doug, sorry, but he's Canadian, and I work with him, and I was telling you what I just said, that Larry David's a sweetheart. He goes, no, he's not, because I saw him. He was on Letterman, and he was on Jimmy Fallon's show, and he was still the jerk. And I said, that's called being in character.
And that Andy Kaufman, don't get me started about that Andy Kaufman guy. That guy was crazy, man.
I liked Andy Kaufman, but I really hated that fat loudmouth guy that went on Tony Clifton. I didn't like him.
Yeah, that guy was.
But I love Andy Kaufman. Mm-hmm. But I didn't like him. I didn't like Tony Clifton. Tony Clifton can go to hell, but I really like Andy Kaufman. Then if you like Andy Kaufman, you like Tony Clifton.
So let me get this straight. Like, okay, now, can we talk a bit about Superman? Like, are you saying the same thing? Superman, Clark Kent, same?
Nate
Bergatze.
I had one more thing to say about him. Not just him, but we like it when comics do Saturday Night Live for the monologue. We like that, right?
Yeah, it's much better.
Remind me, I got to get back to Seth Meyers, that thing that's on YouTube. But
okay.
Nate Bergatze, last thing about him. Okay, him and other comics. But I noticed with Nate Bergatze a lot. You could see his monologue on Saturday Night Live on YouTube, and they're lighting the band members. So there's like a sax player. He's like right up front, and he doesn't laugh at all the jokes, and I don't like that. And then you got the guitarist girl in the back, and she's lit. Why are they lit? Because they smoke a pot. No, they're not. They're lit by lights.
At Saturday Night Live? Oh,
why?
Say it ain't so.
It's kind of like a show we did, and very nice lady, I will not say her name. She was very nice to one of our dear departed friends. Mm-hmm. We saw her at a certain wake.
Oh, yes.
But she's not listening to this.
No.
But, I have my cameras, my pads. I only have like 110 now. I lost 10 of them.
He's got 360 recordings of all of. You should do a virtual reality experience. You've got angles from everywhere.
People come in and it's like, Netflix is here or what?
Poor man's
Saturday Night
Netflix.
Live doesn't have this many.
No, we get more cameras than Saturday Night Live.
So I had a camera, and unfortunately, my best set, which was our sold-out Blizzard show,
Yes.
was on her. And she didn't laugh at any of my jokes.
Oh, no, she did not like your jokes. She sat there with a stone face.
With her arms crossed.
With her arms crossed,
So
as you do.
That's what it feels like when I watch Saturday Night Live, and I'm trying to enjoy the comics monologue. And these are funny jokes, but these are musicians. They don't have a sense of humor. Why are the lights showing them?
Well, and they can't, to be fair to the musicians, they're waiting for their cue, kind of. So they're not relaxing on stage. They're waiting there. They know they're on camera.
They're not listening.
And they're not listening. They're like, okay, when is the commercial break? I gotta play the music in about 3 minutes. They're keeping an eye on the time. So to be fair to the musicians, they're not in the audience relaxing. They're working. But I agree with you. This shouldn't be there. There should be like a curtain. Why don't they have a curtain?
It's distracting.
Yeah, I guess they like that style of the open stage to kind of show that it's like a live and the excitement and the band is there. But yeah, I agree with you. It'd be better if they just put them behind a curtain.
Either Andy Kaufman or Mitch Hedberg said, do you think the conductor likes the audience? And if so, why is he turning his back all the time on? Right? And they're watching the conductor.
Yeah.
They're watching the conductor.
Exactly.
Usually, you may know this, but from the Late Show, from Letterman, Saturday Night Live, they have a music director, and that's the conductor of the whole band.
Yeah.
And everybody's watching him. It's usually the keyboard player, like Paul Schaefer.
Paul Schaefer,
Right.
yeah, he was famous.
For Saturday Night Live, for the longest time, it was that weird...
GC?
That's
What was
the
it?
guy-
GC
the
something?
guitarist.
The
That's what I
guitar,
was talking
GC something? G.E. Smith. G.E. Smith. G.E.
yeah.
Smith.
He was always exaggerating when he played the guitar.
Yeah.
He's like, he's wincing.
G.E. Smith
oh,
and the
it
Saturday
hurts
Night Live
so
Band.
much to play the A chord.
Yeah.
That's why the camera was on him,
Uh-huh.
because he was the director, and everybody's watching him. The camera crew is watching him. Everybody's watching him because he's the music director.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to know when to cut the CM, right?
Yep.
Cut the commercial.
You wanted to talk about Seth Meyers?
Yeah, I got to wrap this up with this episode. Seth Meyers, their YouTube behind-the-scenes episode is fantastic to watch, because the way you do it, Saturday Night Live, you start like on a Monday,
Yeah.
and they're up all night. And how are they able to stay up
That's
all night?
interesting. How
Mike?
do they stay
That's
up all
weird.
night?
That must be really
It
good
must
coffee.
be hard. It's good. It must be something. It's espresso, I think.
Might be
it's
Colombian
espresso.
coffee.
Colombia, yes.
Yeah.
Juan Valdez
The
brought it into
fine
the country.
Colombian makes Saturday Night Live a
It's
wonderful
funny how
show.
those comedians die at such a young age.
The Cuervo Gold. So they start on Monday, and they have the writers' meetings, which Larry David always hated. They show all the meetings.
Yeah.
And then they have a guest. So you have a guest.
Guest
So you-
comes in on Tuesday, or does he come in on Monday?
Comes in on Tuesday.
Tuesday.
They prepare on Monday. George Clooney. Let's say George Clooney is the guest. He comes in on Tuesday. We've already prepared a lot of skits, and each writer, and then Seth Meyers at the time, he goes, okay, we'll use yours. We won't use that one. We'll use this one. We had 40 proposals. We're going to use 20.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the show, when we go live, we're actually using like 8 of them.
I mean, to be fair, I will give them full credit that they do all of that in 1 week. That's a monumental task and get the props ready. They got to get the costumes and the props.
The whole team. It bonds you with the host.
Yeah, and it is quite an undertaking. So I'll give full credit to like Lorne Michaels and the people at SNL. They do work very hard, but I think sometimes they're under too much pressure, to produce.
This is part of the process, and so you see everybody pitching ideas, and then they'll pick some of these, and they throw those ideas away. And as we've said in a previous show, some of those ideas they got from Logan and I, because they're stealing ideas.
Yeah,
all
you said
the
they used
time.
to sit at the back of the comedy club with like a notepad and just to take notes. Yeah, that's a
All
little
the time.
suspicious.
They were stealing all the time.
But then again, they were under insane time pressure, so I'm sure they were like, okay, we'll see what they got. Let's go to the Carolines tonight. We'll go to the Improv tomorrow, and we'll see what's up.
It got to the point where Larry David told us, he goes, you see those a-holes in the back writing down? He goes, have you ever seen people writing down jokes before? Why do you think they're writing down jokes? Those a-holes work at Saturday Night Live. And back then there was a show called Fridays.
Oh, yes, Fridays. Michael Richards was in that.
Yeah.
That was a notorious show. Didn't they have a riot on set?
Yeah.
Andy
He had
Kaufman.
like a sandbox, and he was like destroying tanks. I mean, toy soldiers and stuff. He was crazy.
I think that was featured in Man on the Moon, the Andy Kaufman movie with Jim Carrey, because I think that was a famous meltdown where Andy Kaufman just said, "Hey, I don't buy this set. I don't buy this skit. And he just went out of character. He ruined the skit,
live.
and like Michael Richards freaked out, and like people freaked out, and they hated him because he just would not go along with the skit, and he was doing a bit. I mean, obviously he was doing a bit.
Yeah, he ruined it live.
Yeah,
Andy Kaufman,
and they hated him for that. And I think that was his last episode or something.
But Michael Richards would have all these like toy soldiers and stuff, and he would like explode the sandbox. He put like firecrackers.
I think I remember that.
And then, did you know he was crazy? Have you ever
what
the N-word episode? You never knew. He was
never
crazy.
knew. Saw that one coming.
Well,
never saw that coming.
That guy's
well,
crazy.
he was great in I think he was in UHF with Weird Al Yankovic, wasn't he? That was one of his best roles, and he was funny. And he did the soldier thing in that too. I think it's funny how in the 80s, the 80s, you could get away because there was no YouTube. You could get away with recycling the same bits again and again and again because you do it on TV once, people would see it, they forget about it. A few months later, you do it in a movie, and so you see these bits again and again and again because they could get away with it. Now you can't do that because it's all on YouTube, and people are like, "Hey, you did that last week."
That's what comics used to do. You go Gotham City Live, then you go to Caroline's
Exactly.
and do the same set. So I brought that up Fridays and Sunday Night Live because Sunday Night Live. So here's the process. And they're writing, and a lot of stuff gets thrown.
We love you, Saturday Night Live, by the way, if you want to have us on.
I mean, we're ready.
I got 1 minute.
Or don't have us on. Just fire us.
Don't listen to the rest of the podcast. That's all I got to say. Don't listen to the rest of our podcast episodes. We're never going to get on.
Just fire us. Who's the comedian who got fired and now he's on Joe Rogan all the time?
Oh, yes.
Best thing ever happened
his
to
name?
him.
It is.
We'll think of his name.
I think Saturday Night Live can be good for some artists and it can be bad for others. Like some artists who they kind of stifles their creativity, I think.
So Sunday Night Live, you don't have to put us on. Just hire us and then fire us. Best thing ever happened to Shane Gillis.
And then you get on Joe Rogan.
Shane Gillis, right?
I mean, Joe Rogan is the new Saturday Night Live. Let's be honest. Shane Gillis, yeah.
Shane Gillis. Rogan is the new Carson / Ted Koppel.
He is. Clearly.
Nightline / Tonight Show.
You told me about that. I think we mentioned it on a previous podcast. You told me about that guy, the country singer that was on his the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah, Wheeler or Wheeler.
And
something.
he was on. What was
West
it like?
Virginia.
Yeah, he was on. He's kind of a new country. He's not like he's kind of an interesting artist. And he was on Saturday Night Live the week before or something. He was saying, and he got like almost no album
He
sales.
sold like 5 CDs.
Yeah, something like that.
Saturday Night Live.
And then he went on Joe Rogan.
And they got millions of downloads.
Yeah.
I think it's called Raunchy Honky Talk or Raunchy Country because he was on there and he was
Sturgill Stevens, that's his name, right? Sturgill Stevens, I think.
Wow, good memory. He's on X-Hamster and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Pornhub.
Pornhub, yeah.
Yeah, Pornhub, that's what it was. Why do I know X-Hamster?
I don't want to know.
This damn PC doesn't work.
Why is there a roll of tissue paper, of toilet paper here on your desk?
Mike,
I'm interested.
This keyboard is very sticky. You don't want to be touching this.
Oh, hello, Patreon.
No, but he gets downloads from Pornhub, and they let him do it because he has raunchy lyrics. He has lyrics like,
explicit lyrics.
It screwed your mom, it screwed your dad, it screwed your dog, it screwed your sister.
That's some real heavy country there.
That's
like Ozarks country.
Let me take a guess. He wouldn't be from West Virginia, would he?
We love you, Joe. We're kidding.
Well, Joe makes West Virginia things all the time.
He does.
Mark Bailey, Mike Miller, Talk Funny.